Welcome everyone to today's Title Topics webinar. These are ALTA's free presentations that we've been offering every month on important issues to title professionals. I'm Jeremy Yohe, ALTA's Director of Communications, and today we're going to have a great discussion on social media. Interest in social media seems to be growing as we have about 325 people registered for today's webinar. Before starting, I just need to touch on a few housekeeping items. A copy of today's presentation was emailed about 45 minutes ago to all registrants. If you didn't get it, please shoot me an email at jyohe@alta.org. That's jyohe@alta.org, and I will send you a copy of the presentation after the webinar. All participants' lines are muted for today's presentation. If at any time you have a question, please use the chat box function, and we will save some time at the end of the webinar to address questions. As an added benefit, today's presentation is being recorded. After we've done the processing, the recording will be available at alta.org/title topics. And again, that's alta.org/title topics. I need to thank SolvePro for once again sponsoring our Title Topics webinars. Their support allows us to continue providing these educational opportunities free of charge. So with that out of the way, let me introduce today's speaker. Joining us, we have ALTA's own Wayne Stanley. He is the association's Manager of Public Affairs. And in addition to being our driving force in growing ALTA's social media growth, he's also responsible for media relations and helping manage the Title Action Network. Wayne, thanks for joining us today and helping us dip our toes into the world of hashtags, tweets, and followers.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
I will give you control of the presentation, and you can take it from here.
Great, thank you. All right, well, thank you all for joining us today. Like Jeremy said, this is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. We are doing a lot with social media at ALTA, but we hear every day from our members that are utilizing social media and have many different questions because there's such an array of experience and sort of ability right now with social media in the industry. So when Jeremy brought up the idea of doing a Title Topics webinar, I thought that it would be a perfect fit for folks. One of the things that you really have to consider when you're talking about a social media strategy and how you're going to sell that to others in your own organization, how you're going to get that buy-in so that it's actually successful, is you kind of have to worry about the buts. What are the buts that you need to worry about? And I'm not talking about Kim Kardashian in any of this. I'm talking about the buts that you hear from folks as to why they should be utilizing social media in their organization. So you might be explaining it, trying to sell starting a social media strategy, or maybe you've currently got several social media accounts and you just want to sort of start over. You want to reinvigorate your current strategy and create different content and that sort of a thing. You have to go through, but I don't have the staff. I don't have the time, but I don't have the resources, but I don't see how it's useful. Those are the four biggest things that we hear from folks when they're trying to jumpstart a social media strategy or begin one. So hopefully, as we go through some of this information today, and I know this is a short webinar, so I hope to speak for about 20 minutes and then allow some questions from folks, and I've got a lot that I want to jam-pack in here, but hopefully we can answer some of those and you'll be able to have a little more firepower behind you when you go to bat for your own social strategy. One of the first things that I want to talk about is the old adage of working smarter, not harder. That is the best way that you can have a successful social media strategy. Yes, for some organizations and some companies, it makes sense to have several individuals on staff that are managing various social media accounts and that sort of a thing. But for many, especially in the title industry, you're just not going to have that luxury to have a dedicated individual for social media engagement and content strategy. So because of that, I just wanted to talk about some tools that are available to help you manage your resources and your time and to better be organized for your social strategy. And these are near and dear to my heart because like Jeremy said, in addition to the social strategy at ALTA, I wear several other hats here. And so because of that, when I have the time to actually sit down and think about our social strategy, I need to go ahead and plan those posts, those photos, those videos, those tweets. I need to plan them right then, because who knows when one of our states will ask for a TAN alert, or we'll need to issue a press release, and I know that many on the phone understand those same competing priorities. So there are a few different tools that you can use to help you sort of manage your social strategy, and one of those is Hootsuite, and that's what's on your screen right now. Hootsuite's a free program. That's Hootsuite, Hootsuite.com. There are some paid levels of membership, but to start off with, it's a free program. You can link up to 5 social media networks to begin with for free, and what this helps you to do is Hootsuite allows you to see various pieces of your social accounts all at one time. So you can have different columns up about your current, if you're on Twitter, for purely your mentions, purely your followers, purely the timeline of the people that you're following, that sort of a thing. But you've also got your scheduled tweets in there. So if you go through and you know that it's going to be a big week and you've got several different announcements, when you're dealing with the sort of real-life side of your business, you don't always remember that, oh, I need to tweet this as well. Like, this is a good moment to spread this information online. So if you know it's coming up, you can go ahead and go into Hootsuite or go into TweetDeck and type the tweet, put in your links, put in your hashtags, and sort of like a Ron Popeil product, you can just set it and forget it. And that's one of the best things for me, and I'm going to show you TweetDeck in just a second, and you'll see a couple of the scheduled tweets that ALTA currently has. But I mean, on Monday afternoons, that's when I try to really plan out the bulk of our scheduled tweets. I realize other things happen, and you'll want to put things in there to make it relevant for your folks as different things happen during the week, but you can certainly plan ahead for a lot of these things. One of the great things about Hootsuite is they have a lot of different plugins on the various web browsers. So, for example, I use Google Chrome instead of Internet Explorer or Firefox, for example, and they have a plugin called Hootlet, Hootlet. And Hootlet allows me, so any pages that I'm on the internet, if I press my little Hootlet button, which is the owl that you sort of see there in the middle of your screen, it allows me to share to whatever social media account I want the information that's on that page. So for example, that drop-down box would choose our ALTA Facebook page, but I could also choose our LinkedIn account, our Pinterest account, or our Twitter account.
Hey,
and
Wayne.
You can share right from there. Yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt. Had a couple of comments come in that said they don't see the Hootsuite. Could you maybe explain that what's on the screen is actually the Hootsuite that you're referencing? It's maybe not branded very well, so people may think it's not matching up with what you're talking about.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So what's actually on the screen, I apologize, I believe that I did say it was Hootsuite itself, but what's on the screen is this is the ALTA meetings page for our federal conference, and then the white box on top of that is the Hootlet function to show that when you're on any page, you can just very easily share right from that. You don't have to go between various platforms and that sort of a thing, and they have a similar function for these other web browsers as well, and that's just what I wanted to highlight there.
Gotcha.
This next slide that should be on your screen now, this is TweetDeck. It's very similar, and this really is TweetDeck. It's TweetDeck, DECK.com. You can download the application onto your desktop, or you can access it via mobile through apps, or just web-based through that URL. And this sort of shows, this is very similar to what Hootsuite looks like as well. So what you see here is sort of the background of what I see for ALTA, for example. So on the left, there are a couple of scheduled tweets there that we've got planned for today and tomorrow. You've got our current activity for some of our followers, what they're doing, what they're liking. That helps me to try to create content that would be engaging and would matter to our followers, because if I see that a bunch of people are talking about something from ESPN, or for example something from Good Morning America here, I can try to tie in something that we're doing into sort of these wider shared pieces of content and make it more valuable for our folks. And then we've also got the people that are mentioning at ALTA online, and then our current followers. That's one of the best ways to get followers for your Twitter account, is to follow people back that follow you. I don't follow everyone back, but I try to do as many as possible for us, especially folks that are specifically within the title industry. So all of that shows up, and like I said, there are a number of different columns that you can put in and that sort of a thing. And for anything that I mentioned today, if you want sort of a more in-depth tutorial or to talk about any of this, feel free to email me at any time at wayne@alta.org, and I'm happy to set that up with you. Okay, so then, to sort of give you a little bit more to combat any of the buts in your life, I just wanted to talk very quickly about some of the social stats. And some of you that have talked with me before about social media, you've heard some of these, so I'm just going to go through them very quickly. But even though there have been recent reports about Facebook's engaged users dropping, it's still got over 1 billion active users on that social media service right now. That would make it the 3rd largest country in the world. And so for folks that still aren't sure if you should be competing or utilizing Facebook and other social networks, they're too big to ignore anymore. And so whether your social strategy is small or large, and whatever your capabilities might be, you just can't ignore it right now. And that's a really powerful stat for folks to share. Social is still the #1 activity on the web, and with the stat right underneath that half of the world's population is under 30, I think it's safe to say that it's not going to stray too far from being the #1 activity on the web for quite some time. Additionally, 2 things that I always like to point out when I'm talking about social stuff is that 53% of Twitter users recommend products on their Twitter accounts, and 90% of consumers trust peer reviews. That would be through websites like Google Reviews and Yelp, those sorts of places. If you haven't searched your organization or your business on Google or on Yelp, you want to make sure that you do, because even if you haven't created an account yourself, you never know what customer has had a positive or a negative experience with you, and they might have gone on there to make sure that others know about that as well. Just for sort of cross-marketing purposes for ALTA, this sort of fits into ALTA's 7th pillar of the best practices with dealing with consumer complaints. This is yet another place that you may have some consumer complaints. You may have folks talking about your services and the experience that they've had with your organization or business, and you want to make sure that you have the tools in place to respond to each of those. So that's an important one to keep in mind as well. And then we move on to video. YouTube is still the 2nd largest search engine after Google. More than 72 hours of video are being uploaded every minute to YouTube. That's even higher now. I think it's more like 83 hours of video every minute. That's not going to change either. People are consuming video at a crazier rate than I think anyone involved in social ever expected at the beginning. And videos are getting longer. It used to be that your standard watch time would be maybe 30 or 40 seconds, and we're creeping up on almost a minute now of what folks are willing to watch, and that includes on mobile, which is pretty fascinating to think that you would sit through longer than a minute of video on your phone, that's not an actual movie. Additionally, LinkedIn has 1 new member every 2 seconds, and that's the equivalent of the entire Ivy League enrolling in LinkedIn every day. That's important because LinkedIn's a great way to be visible to consumers and to some of your industry partners through people in your own organization. So if you don't have members of your staff and that sort of a thing involved in having an active LinkedIn page, you should definitely do so. If you perhaps were maybe some of the first people to join LinkedIn several years ago, it's always good to do sort of a LinkedIn audit. We recently did that with ALTA. Some of our most public staff members, so some of our membership department that are dealing with our members most often, some of our government affairs folks, we went through their LinkedIn profile and just gave it an audit to make sure that it was properly conveying all the services that they currently provide our members, so that when our members receive emails from Justin Ailes or Steve Gottheim, they're able to search for them on LinkedIn and see all the different things that they're doing for them. It's just a good way to stay involved with these folks. So, now I've tried to help with, some of those buts, but how else can ALTA help, your current social strategy? Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about our new education e-kit. We introduced this in October of last year, and it's available on your screen now. You should see the ALTA website, and on the far right tab is resources. An education e-kit is about 3/4 of the way down. This e-kit is full of information. There are slideshows and videos and various blog content and educational articles, but we've also got some social media content on there. This is designed for our members, big and small, that don't have the time to come up with new social content on their own and need a little bit of help. This is specifically geared toward education about title insurance and the industry in general, so this is more for consumers, but you can use a lot of what we have in here to sort of translate that into various goods and services that you might be wanting to push out on social for your own business. One of the best things that we have right now is our ALTA Social Media Dictionary. This is helpful for any of the folks on the call that do not have any sort of background in social media. You know, I'm not sure what Flickr is. I don't really know what a follower versus a tweet, you know, is on Twitter, that sort of a thing. We currently have a set of dictionaries that just provide terms that you should know for these various social media platforms. We're introducing new dictionaries all the time. At our Business Strategies Conference in just 3 weeks, we're going to be able to share 4 new social media dictionaries. 2 of those will be for Snapchat and Vine. So we'll have those available for folks then. If you don't have access to this, you have to be an ALTA member to receive this information on our site, and I'm also able to send you a PDF if you would like as well. The other thing in our social media content, like I said, is we have sample tweets. We have them for Twitter. We've got sample Facebook posts. It's my goal that throughout this year we can offer updates to those so that, you know, folks are able to offer fresh content on their pages. But they're also just meant to be sort of a brainstorming piece, so that if you've got questions about what your social strategy, what your content strategy should look like, you can at least see some samples of how you should be talking and how you can be using each of these respective platforms. So those are on there as well. If anyone ever has ideas that they would like to be included in those in the future, or has other needs for these sorts of resources, please definitely let us know, and we'll make sure that we update those. So what about your own social media strategy? How do you sort of get this started? How do you jump start it, or, you know, from the bottom up, create a strategy? One of my favorite stories to talk about is to be daring. The social space is still so new, and there's so many different things that you can do in it that the sky's really the limit. And just because you've never seen it done on social before doesn't mean that your organization or company shouldn't try it. One of the most successful social media events that I ever pulled off was when I worked on Capitol Hill for a U.S. Senator. And I worked for an 80-year-old man that was not using social media himself, but we were trying to figure out ways to better connect with his constituents. And how do you make, you know, the Senate is very cyclical, just like many of our businesses are very cyclical. And so how do you make something that you do all the time more engaging to customers or to your peers? And so one of the things that we did was we decided to do legislation introduction through Facebook only. So instead of doing some big press conference or just issuing a press release with a statement, we decided that we would do a live stream video of the introduction of the bill with some experts to talk about what the legislation would do, and only made that available to folks that had liked our Facebook page. We are considering doing some of that stuff with ALTA soon. There are a lot of different ways that you can do that, but that led to a lot of press coverage. We were the first congressional office to ever do anything like that. And so just don't be afraid to push the envelope just because it's never been done, and you know, you might be scared of what the audience might be or what the reaction, you know, might be. As long as you're not being inappropriate or vulgar in what you're doing, you can get away with so much on social because your audience is so varied. You also want to make the time and start small. Don't think that you need to begin with all, you know, 800 different social media platforms at once. Start with a very concentrated effort on the accounts that you think your folks would enjoy the most. If your sort of customers are the visual type, maybe you should start with doing YouTube videos and a Pinterest page. If you've got a majority of folks that are on the go or are extremely tech-focused, maybe you should start with Twitter. That sort of a thing. Just think through how it best fits for your own organization. You also want to be relevant. One of the things that we try to do at ALTA is we try to tie anything that we're doing to pop culture. Next month, one of our social content strategy pieces will deal with March Title Madness, where we'll combine the best of the NCAA with the best of the title industry. You might not think those always go together, but they do. It worked really well for us last year, and we're going to do it again this year. We also, whenever there are mentions of title insurance and pop culture, we talk about that. Downton Abbey, Arrested Development, Chicago Fire, CNBC Investigative Reports, all of these different shows have mentioned title insurance recently, and we've been able to highlight that on the page and connect it with people's lives sort of outside of what they might interact with you in a business setting. And last, I said it earlier, but don't be afraid of video. You know, there's so much video happening right now through YouTube and Vine and Instagram. And just another stat to throw at you is that recently Neo Mobile said that they believe that 2/3 of the world's mobile data traffic will be video by 2017. That's a pretty hefty number to throw out there, but it's a train that's definitely coming, and if you're not participating, you're going to miss it. ALTA is trying to do a lot more with video, whether it's video tutorials, video announcements, just sort of video of our members talking about the association and title insurance in general and why that's important for consumers. You know, we're trying to incorporate video into everything that we do, and I think that one of the misconceptions with video in any industry, not just the title industry, is that it needs to sort of be studio quality. You've got to have the right lighting, it needs to be scripted, you've got to have a steady camera, and really it doesn't need to be anymore. And that's not really what your audience is going to expect when you're using video. You know, these Vine videos, for anyone that hasn't used Vine or heard of Vine, it's an app that was developed by Twitter, and it was announced or released in January of last year, and it's currently got, I think, 17 million active users, and Instagram has video as well. It's got 130 million active users right now, but between the two of those, you're able to share either 6-second or 13-second videos that can be sort of behind the scenes in your business, that can offer snapshots of positive remarks from previous consumers. It can showcase some of your employees talking about the different services that they provide. There are a lot of different ways that you can use video, especially when, if you sort of get it out of your mind that it needs to be professional, that it needs to be more like a PSA. That's just not what folks expect anymore. It can be more, it can be sort of gritty. It can be kind of unique to you and your company. Whatever makes your consumers smile and appreciate your business, you can figure out a way to highlight that through video, through any of your social strategies. One of the last things I talk about is working out loud. That's really the best way to incorporate your social strategy into any sort of digital media presence that you have. A lot of folks they just rack their brain trying to understand how they can utilize some of what's in their business for their members or for their consumers. And so we talk about working out loud at ALTA a lot, and it's just making sure that your audience knows what you're doing. You know, you take a lot of things for granted, but if you make sure that you're talking about it on social media, it makes people feel involved in a way that they otherwise wouldn't. And you can do that through sort of, I joke about the 4 Ds, design, develop, deliver, and dance. Anything, for example, if you're going to develop a new product and you want input from previous consumers or potential customers, you can do a contest on Facebook. One of the biggest success stories of this most recently was Lay's potato chips. They did a flavor campaign on Facebook. They really didn't put a lot of money behind it originally. They were looking for just a few different ideas that they might get about various flavors, and it turned into a whole national campaign. I can't remember off the top of my head what their engagement rate was for their social media users, but it was off the charts, and now they've done it again this year. And so if you've gone through the grocery store recently and you've seen crazy chip flavors like chicken and waffles and things like that, that's because Lay's has fully bought into the develop side of the 4Ds. And then, the deliver and the design, anytime that you can show options for folks on social media, that's good. Anytime that you have any sort of announcement, whether that's announcements about new products, discontinuation of products, anything like that where folks can see that there's action within your organization or your business, and they might be able to comment or share that with others, that's good content to post as well. And then I think the one that we probably use the most is the dance or the celebrate. This doesn't have to just be major milestones or things like that. This can be if a member of your organization or staff just completed a special training, and now they're able to offer better goods and services to your customers. You can highlight that online and sort of celebrate that and talk about how your potential consumers and customers are going to get more now because Sherry just completed this new training. Things like that are easy ways that you can talk about the dance. Another way that we dance at ALTA, one of our most successful photos, and I think this happens in just about any organization or business, one day we walked in and everyone here was wearing purple. That strangely happens a lot with people wearing the same color at ALTA, but that day almost the whole staff was in purple. So we took a very quick photo and said, obviously folks are feeling purple today. And our audience just really enjoyed it. They enjoyed getting sort of to see the human side of our staff. Some of the staff that they don't get to talk to on a day-to-day basis was in the photo, so it was good for them to sort of see a better picture of the full staff of the association. Anything like that that you can throw out there will be really good for your strategy. The very last piece that I want to talk about after all of this is how to stay compliant. As you're developing a social media strategy and with all of the work that ALTA has done with the industry best practices, I just wanted to make sure that I brought this up. Most recently, the Federal Financial Institutions Examination Council, the FFIEC, issued social media guidance. They did it in December, and you can see the 6 members of that council right there on your screen. But they issued guidance that is designed to ensure that there are policies and procedures in effect to provide oversight and controls for the risks that are posed with any organization that's involved in social media with consumers or colleagues. There are a number of different items in this guidance, and I won't go through all of them because that will bore you, but it's very similar to the whole purpose behind the best practices with ALTA. There just need to be written controls and procedures in place to ensure that, for example, if there's some sort of IT security breach, if your Twitter account gets hacked and a tweet gets sent, who's going to respond to that, who's in charge of changing passwords and making sure that anyone with access knows that the passwords are changed, who does this breach get reported to, how far does that report go, all of those different things. What are the controls and procedures in place for that? Another one is to identify a system for answering consumer complaints, both on your own social media channels and on maybe your competitors' social media channels. So just talking through as an organization, how do you confront those and do those get reported to someone, that sort of a thing. If you simply Google FFIEC social media guidance, you'll be able to find this information. Or again, just feel free to email me and I can send that to you as well. So I know I've gone through a lot now, but that's basically the end of my presentation, Jeremy. I don't know if you want to open it for questions now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks, Wayne. Some great advice on how the listeners can develop a social media presence. And now we just need to learn how to craft the effective 140-character message to explain the value of title insurance, right?
Exactly.
As a reminder, if anyone has any questions, please use the chat box function. We have had a few questions come in over the half hour, Wayne. And one asks if it's true that Facebook reduces reach for posts done through a third-party service like Hootsuite. You have any knowledge on the impact of reach when you use Hootsuite?
I've heard that as well, but I have never seen anything that would definitively prove that. I've got several what I consider to be close friends that work for Facebook. I've asked that before, and I've never gotten a clear answer. So maybe that is my answer. But you know, I can't say that for certain. But I will say, even though I did encourage the use of platforms like Hootsuite and TweetDeck, I still try to, as often as possible, schedule posts through the individual platforms whenever I can, because it's best for you to really know how the back end of Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn work on their own, so that if, you know, something like a security breach does happen, you know how to get through the back end of these systems on your own without a third-party vendor. So I will throw that caveat out there.
Okay. Another question on Facebook, and this one's from Jane, and she was asking if you've seen Facebook's new app pages and was curious if this might change the way or the type of posts you make to Facebook.
I think that it will. I think that, you know, Facebook, as you all probably have seen, continues to modify the news feed, and with more and more of the users of Facebook accessing it via mobile, I think that you're going to see them parcel out more and more of the content that you get on Facebook into various apps. I think you might be talking about Story, which is the most recent app that Facebook released, and it makes a lot of what might show up in your newsfeed or on your own page look more like a magazine. There are other apps like that that have been out there for a while, but Facebook's trying to really, now that it's a publicly traded company, it's trying to increase its output of new products and services. And so I think that you're going to see them continue to sort of segment the kinds of content that you receive through different platforms.
Okay, and Marcy just sent in, she says she thinks it's called Facebook Pages. Is this correct?
Yes, Pages is a good app to monitor if you have a page for your organization or business. That's what I use to monitor and post via mobile. It's an app that you can download in the App Store on either Apple or Google products, and it allows you to interact with any of the pages that you manage as though you were that page. So for anybody that's a current social media manager, you know that if you're accessing Facebook web-based, you have to kind of toggle between yourself and the page that you're dealing with, whereas Pages, you're just always logged in as, for example, I'm always logged in as ALTA. So it allows you to sort of update on the go, which is helpful for me with a lot of ALTA's major meetings. That's what we use to post our updates.
Right. This question's from Rebecca, Wayne, and you touched on it a little, during your presentation on how to grow your followers. But any other effective ways aside from following the people who follow you on growing followers on Twitter?
Specifically on Twitter, so probably 3 or 4 years ago, there was a widely held thought that the more you tweet, the more annoyed your followers will be. And I think that was probably the case a little bit, but there have been a lot of articles recently about how really there are many studies now that show that you just have to tweet often to build your followers. The way that Twitter works, for those of you that may still be investigating this space, your timeline is sort of in real time as it happens. So if you're following 100 different people and they're tweeting all day long, there's really no way that you're going to see what they tweeted at 9 a.m. So you can, you know, repeat. That's why you see so many business accounts, especially, oftentimes being very repetitive on their Twitter account, because unless you go to their home page to their, you know, to see all of their tweets at once, you're not going to see that they've tweeted the same thing over and over. You're just going to see it once in your timeline. So that's the best way, is to tweet as often as possible. You want to use hashtags as often as possible. I know that's kind of cliche, and a lot of times people use them ironically, but many people still search through the hashtags. They're not going away. That's why Facebook introduced hashtags. One of the ways that you want to encourage engagement in your tweets, you want to put the link, any link that you have in there, at least 3/4 of the way into the tweet. You don't want to lead a tweet with a link. You don't want it to be in the middle. You want it to be as much to the end as possible. And then even if people aren't following you, you can go through and search. For example, we search a lot of our members. So if our members are on Twitter, we will go through and like people that are following the various underwriters and title agents and abstractors out there, and then they'll see, oh, the National Association has followed us. Then they'll follow ALTA back. So that's a really good way as well. That's one of the best ways that we increased our followers so quickly last year.
So people on the call could go out there and search for real estate companies, lenders, people they may be trying to, work with, correct?
Yes, definitely. That would be a great way to build followers on Twitter.
All right. Well, we're kind of past the half hour, but we got one more good question from Heather, and she was curious to how to address negative comments. There's always going to be those people out there, and what's the best way, Wayne, to address those that people may post on your social media?
Well, there are basically two schools of thought on this, and you have to decide what's best for your own organization. There are some that handle just about all complaints with the blacklist method, which is you delete it and move on. They utilize their Facebook page or their Twitter page, these sorts of platforms purely to push information out, and they're not nearly as worried about the actual engagement, so they will ignore these completely. But as we've seen with a variety of these celebrity sort of scandals on social media, you really can't ignore it because they can really blow up before you know it. And so the best way to deal with it, depending on the platform and that sort of a thing, is to try to, what I try to do personally is move it from the social sort of virtual side to the human side. This is what a lot of the airlines do best. Well, okay, you had a problem. Why don't you direct message me your information and we'll have someone call you. So you bring it offline to deal with it. Unless it's something that if you're proud of the resolution and you know that the resolution is something that other folks are going to need as well, I would certainly handle that on social so that it's visible to your audience. But otherwise, I would try to bring it offline and handle it, privately within the company through whatever controls you might have in place.
Okay, very good. If you're looking for some more information about social media, ALTA has a great opportunity coming up in March. Wayne, you want to talk briefly about the Social Media Summit that you've developed and will be held in conjunction with the Business Strategies Conference in Nashville? Maybe touch on who's speaking and what people can expect to learn.
Sure. So our ALTA Social Media Summit, it's our inaugural summit. Like I said at the beginning of this, we've got so many folks that are interested in it in social media. We just wanted to be able to offer a half-day summit to people that are working in this space and would like to hear from folks from outside the title industry about social media. And so the summit will take place on Wednesday, March 12th at the Omni Nashville, which is where ALTA's Business Strategies Conference will be held. It will begin at noon with an hour-long networking lunch. That's where folks will be able to register. And then it will be followed by 4 sessions on various social media education. The first session will be presented by Nobu Hata with the National Association of Realtors, and he's going to talk about using social media to increase your market share and talk about sort of how do you better show to folks within your own organization the return on investment for social media use. The realtors do a great job with social media, and so we wanted to highlight that to our members. The following session, I will present the latest social media fads and flops, sort of what you might be seeing that you should absolutely stay away from, and what is currently trending that you should definitely be incorporating into your own strategy. That will be followed by Ben Martin with Online Community Results, who is going to talk about 5 tools that you can use today to make your life easier when managing your social media accounts. and trying to sell your business. And then we will have the summit be followed up by creating content to meet consumers' needs, and that will be presented by Sarah from AARP. They have a whole department dedicated to social media now at AARP, and they're doing some really fantastic stuff. If you're ever looking for ideas, I would definitely recommend you look at any of AARP's platforms and see what they're doing. But she's going to come and talk about creating a social media strategy that doesn't break the bank or your brain. So I think that folks will find it very interesting and worthwhile. And for anyone that can't join us in person in Nashville, we are going to do our best to offer a live stream of the event. I don't have final information on that, but if you would like to be put on a list to receive that information when it's available, please definitely send me an email.
All right. It should be a great time in the Music City next month. If you missed parts of today's webinar or think others in your office would benefit from listening, recording the presentation will be available for replay after it's edited. And as I mentioned before, it will be available at alta.org/title topics. And again, if you didn't receive a copy of the presentation, please send me an email at jyohe@alta.org. That is JYOHE@alta.org. Looking ahead, our next webinar in March will focus on the importance of enhancing customer service. With purchase orders starting to dominate the market, title companies are going to need to brush up on their service skills. So please be on the lookout for registration information for this webinar. Also, if you have any webinar topics you think that we should be covering, please send me your suggestion. That brings us to the conclusion of today's presentation. Wayne, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. I hope all the listeners found the presentation useful. Take care, everyone.